Morning, everyone. I now call this meeting of the Alabama Commission on Higher Education to order. At this time, if you'll just bow your heads, and I'll just say a quick prayer for us. Heavenly Father, we thank you today for life. We thank you for your goodness and for your blessings over all of us. We pray for your guidance over our deliberations today and ask that you would clearly show us how to conduct our work with a spirit of joy and enthusiasm. I pray for our state and national leaders, Lord. Grant Europe and Russia the peace that only you can provide. We thank you for loving us unconditionally, and we ask all these things in the name of the Lord Jesus Christ. Amen. Amen. At this time, we will say the Pledge of Allegiance, and I'm going to ask Commissioner Frost to start us off.
Place the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Dr. Purcell, please call the roll.
Charles Bunton.
Here.
Miranda Bowman Frost.
Here.
Ann Sermon.
Here.
Norman Crowe. Jody Singleton. Here. Timothy Guy.
Here.
Paul Kennedy.
Here.
Amy Price.
Here.
Larry Turner. Here. Stan Kyler. Stan Nelson.
Here.
Rod Scott. Here. Mr. Chairman, we have a quorum.
Excellent. Everyone should have had time to review the agenda. The chair entertains a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
We have a motion. Take a second to approve. Any questions or comments? All in favor of approving, say aye.
Aye.
And all opposed, like sign. The agenda is approved. Everyone also should have had time to review the finance subcommittee meeting minutes. Are there any additions or corrections to the minutes as presented? Hearing none, chair entertains a motion to approve the finance subcommittee meeting minutes of the December 10th, 2021 finance meeting.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the minutes as presented. Any questions or comments? All in favor of approving, say aye. Aye. All opposed, like sign. Finance subcommittee meeting minutes are approved. Moving into the minutes, everyone should have had time to review the regular minutes. There is one amendment that we have. I believe Commissioner Frost was not. Sermon, I'm sorry. Sorry about that. Commissioner Sermon was not there, so we will delete her from the minutes. Are there any other additions or corrections to the minutes as anyone saw? Hearing none, chair entertains a motion to approve the minutes of the December 10th, 2021 meeting.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the minutes as presented. Any questions or comments? All in favor of approving, say aye. Aye. All opposed, like sign. Minutes are approved. Moves us into the chairman's report. Just a few things. First of all, I want to acknowledge a couple of special guests that we have here. President Brock Kelly from LBW. Thank you for being here. Lucia and Don Killingsworth with Jacksonville State. Are you? He just stepped out for a phone call. Well, we're happy to have him here also. Welcome and welcome to everyone that came. We're glad you're here, and it feels very, very good to be here in person. I've got to tell you. A couple of other things. Alabama Commission on Higher Education is now in the social media world, and we're just thrilled to death about that. I commend our staff of seeing the need of being on there. We are on Facebook, which is all spelled out, as I understand it, Alabama Commission on Higher Education. We are on Instagram, @AIC_EDU, and we are on Twitter at the same address, as I understand it. But I think that's going to be fantastic going forward. I think we need a presence there, and so that can almost be a full-time job. So I wish them well in their endeavors and keeping up with that. And that's about all I have, with the exception of I wanted to just go a little bit off script today and go down the road and just let the commissioners introduce themselves to everyone here. Kind of tell where you're from and how long you've been on the commission. If you want to start.
All right, I'll be glad to. Well, good morning, and happy to be here this morning. Echo your comments about being here in person. I'm Amy Price. I'm from Sylacauga, and I'm the Chief Operating Officer at Coosa Valley Medical Center. And I've been
running away. And so I'm super excited to continue to serve. My interest is in education overall for the state of Alabama, and I look forward to continuing to serve.
I'm Paul Kennedy, the president of the Walker Area Community Foundation in Jasper, Walker County. And my foundation has a very strong interest in early childhood education and in STEM in the what I call the K-14 continuum. About a year and a half, I believe.
Larry Turner, I'm from Chatham, Alabama, in Washington County, Alabama's first oldest county. I spent 40 years in education as a teacher, a principal, a superintendent, a college professor, a dean. So I did the whole gambit. I hate to say retired, but I guess now I'm CEO of my yard. Great power at my disposal. I think I've been on the commission 3 years. I believe that's correct. It's been a real pleasure.
I am Rod Scott, state legislator from Jefferson County. Of course, it's the number you serve. I can't remember how many years. But I think it's been at least 4. And let's just say, Stan, I like your big hair on you.
And the glasses. I want that.
I'm Jody Singleton. I'm from Headland, Alabama. CPA by trade. Come from a family of educators. I have come to appreciate Dr. Sell and staff and for what gets done here. It is impressive and it's important. I am the newest member. This is my second meeting.
Wonderful. Thank you, commissioners. It's just an honor to be up here with this group. They are just absolutely leaders in their community and their profession, and it's just I've loved getting to know them and working with them. They're just a great group. So that concludes my report. Now I'll turn it over to Dr. Purcell for the executive director's report.
Well, thank you. And Donna, we did say nice things about you, but you had to walk out. So you missed all that. We're glad you're here. Yes, I'm excited really about a bunch of issues. We want to share a couple things with you, and then we've got some special guests to present on things later. The first is there's some new reports out nationally. The first one is the ranking of the 4,500 colleges on their return on investment. And it's an okay report. I wouldn't say it's the greatest thing. It's a good place to start. But there's a report that followed up on this which is actually done by a group that actually looks at major, talks about how majors produce a return on investment, and you can sort of see some of the highlights there. So I would suggest maybe looking at some of that. Nearly 1/4 of all college programs of study show graduates failing to recoup their costs 20 years after graduation. So the question is, how do we make sure higher education is affordable? And then how do we make sure that we prepare our students for the jobs that are important in the modern age? And I think for all of us, looking at those things can help us in our decision-making here at the board for new programs and for our campuses in retooling as the world changes around us. One of the quotes that comes from the article on this was from the Georgetown University Center. Encourage students to balance between what they like and what pays. And I think that all of us who are gainfully employed know that there is a balance that's required. We've had a lot of discussions about remediation all across the state. Some good articles on this, and we want to sort of highlight a couple things. And one of them is on this next slide, that our remediation rate has declined. 2021 that went down to 21%. It was much higher a decade ago. But before we totally, celebrate on that, some of it is that we've decided to rethink how remediation happens. We used to just basically test everybody and pop them into remediation, no matter what. There's been a big movement on let's do multiple measures. Let's actually just do triage on people that perhaps don't know where a semicolon ought to go and those kind of things, rather than making them take a remedial course. But it is very good news, I think, for students as they come to college. Our campuses have pivoted and moved to more co-requisite instruction. Jacksonville State was actually very early in doing those kind of assessments. And then we had a big workshop sort of sharing with the campuses about that. And many of them have gone in there. The community college system has done a great job of incorporating it in all their schools. I think it's making a big difference in success. The next one is really about where our remediation concerns are, and these are the school district scores. We just do this by county, and what you'll see is I click a few buttons here, you'll sort of see some counties that actually do amazing things. DeMarcus, if you would click a couple times. There. So these counties look really great in producing students who don't have to be remedial. I mean, 44% in Dallas County. They actually have a real innovative program. But then you'll see other places like Sumter County where almost half of their students have to take developmental ed when they go to college. And so we should do our best as servants to these communities to help these communities do better. Yeah, it's some really good places. And the next slide is about that. Give me a couple more clicks. All right, that's there right there. And what you'll see here is, again, Perry County, which actually has a shortage of math and science teachers, actually only have one student that has to take developmental ed there. Other good counties, Claiborne County, all look real good. And then, of course, if you get down toward the south, your neck of the woods, Mr. Chairman, some of the counties around you are having some issues in preparing their students. And some of our initiatives to actually help get math and science teachers into those districts by doing low repayments and things. Now we've increased the salary for math and science teachers in our schools, so I think that's going to help. But it's sort of different outcomes in different places. We certainly don't want zip code to be an indicator of someone's future success. And the next one is sort of the people who are remediated in the state, where do they come from? So this is sort of not looking within county, but comparing to the state. And the answer here is really, it's still where the big population centers are. So Jefferson County, if we can address their developmental ed needs in their school districts, we can make a big difference. And the next slide will show English, math, and use the same kind of thing, big preponderances from the big county. And so we have to think about what our interventions are, helping our K-12 partners do better in those areas. We do have some data that we provide them. We basically do track students from when they go into college, if they're remediated, and what college they attend, and after 6 years later, do they graduate from college? So there is some information that we provide the school districts to help them improve on their efforts. And this data is also used in the report card for K-12 schools. I want to congratulate Athens State University. They are here. Let's give a shout out to Athens State. Institutions that have an international reach. We had 2 virtual signings. It's sort of like air guitar, except you use your pen instead of guitar. And had a nice event with several dignitaries. And Karnataka State Higher Ed Council is the equivalent of what the Alabama Commission on Higher Ed. They came, and you can sort of see the one guy sort of leaning over. They are on a different time zone, so they were getting in the office very late. And of course, we were there bright and early, so we sort of looked at the funnel ourselves. But anyway, it was a great event, and it's going to be a great partnership between Athens State and the 2 institutions that. And then also I have some visitors from Taiwan. Lee Soon, of course, is our director for AKEEP, the Alabama Korean Education and Economic Partnership. She always helps with these events. Ron Leonard sort of coordinated the activities and gave Ising Young Billy, we call him, an overview of what we're doing. To me, this is important. As you know, our relations with China aren't going so well. And of course, Taiwan is the free, democratic China, and they are coming in to try to fill the void. We used to teach Chinese classes with support the Confucius Institute and those kind of things in the high schools. And of course, the Confucius Institute went out of popularity in our universities. So anyway, the Taiwanese are here to help and be a part of that. They do try to give you good gifts, but do remember, board members, they do talk to you. $25 is the maximum you can receive from people. Next, Nicholas Bolden and I went over and looked at the new Alabama School for Cyber Technology in Huntsville. Miranda met with us at the sort of meeting with everybody to talk about their development and stuff. It'll open real soon. Miranda did not go with us on the tour because she had better shoes on the rest of us. She backed out on rainy day. But it was a great event. It's going to be an amazing contribution to the state. If you're from a school district and you have a real bright kid, you can actually apply for that, and every district has an opportunity to send at least one person there. So that'll be quite good. It's sort of modeled after the Math and Science School. Larry was the president of that at some point, and he's actually been advising this group too on how to put this in action. So Chair Bunton indicated we are on social medicine, social media presence. It's painful for me because we came out for when I was in Arkansas, and I was like, oh, we don't want to do this. My PR guy insisted. And so he set it up. And of course, he put my name as the guy, for the Facebook page. He embedded my Facebook page. And it was my personal one. And of course, all my friends from high school and relatives were bipping for me. And I'm not a very social person. I'm like, I don't want to talk to these people. They're sending you notes and one chat. But you know what? He did a great job communicating with those guys. They love me much more because of his communications than what I could have ever done in person. So I'm kind of happy about that. So we actually have a person doing our stuff. I'll show you a couple of links. So we identify, an institution does well about some of their new innovations. And then, we'll send out some things that we're doing. And then here is us retweeting a tweet from Tricia Crane, who's a reporter that saw us speak at some point. And then this is me meeting an Auburn graduate, Jessie Lynn Nichols, who's Miss Rodeo 2022. She's a great person. She stopped by the commission the same day that the Alabama governor, hey, I'll be out of this. You know why she came out? You think it was to see me? No, her mother works here. She works here. And I said, oh, well, why you're dressed up? You come in and take a picture. You got to take credit for it. But anyway, Sherry Nichols is a proud mother. It's exciting to see all the things he's doing for rodeo and agriculture. Other thing is, if you want to miss a board meeting, you're saying, man, I wish I'd have gone to that board meeting. Couldn't make it. We have them online now, so you can get all our old board meetings. You can sort of see what we said and didn't say. And then at this point, I'll ask Dr. Hood to come forward and talk about FAFSA completion.
Thank you, Dr. Purcell. Good morning, commissioners. It's my pleasure today to speak to you on our efforts, ongoing efforts to improve FAFSA completion. This image is from our FAFSA completion portal, and you can see here that as of yesterday, we had a 43% FAFSA completion percentage for Alabama. This is about 8.3% above where we were last year. So we're doing better than we were this time last year. And there's been a lot of time and effort that we've put into improving our FAFSA completion rates. I think half the staff here behind me is working on FAFSA completion. And Alabama is now one of a handful of states that has tied FAFSA completion to their high school graduation requirements. And as you'll see in a little bit, I think this is paying off for our state as a whole. But why is completing the FAFSA important? Well, we found that historically it's a gateway. It was commonly thought of as a gateway to federal financial aid. But nowadays, the FAFSA is the gateway to all financial aid. Many state and institutional financial aid programs require FAFSA to help determine their eligibility. So really, it's a gateway to all aid. But more importantly, Alabama's class of 2021, last year's class, left about $68 million on the table in unclaimed Pell Grants. And if you look at a graduating class of 50,000 students, that's about $1,400 for every student, which is a pretty big deal. Of course, nowadays, that's about 3 textbooks. But Alabama ranked 15th nationally in unclaimed Pell dollars. So we feel like we need to get our rates up and take care of some of that. But FAFSA completion is strongly associated with positive outcomes. 9 in 10 students who complete the FAFSA will go on to enroll in a college or university the following fall semester. But only 5 in 10 of those students who don't complete the FAFSA go on to enroll. So it's definitely directly related to educational outcomes as well as other quality of life outcomes such as higher incomes, better health, and more civic engagement. So this next slide looks at where Alabama ranks nationally in terms of FAFSA completion compared to other states. You can see here that it ranks 22nd nationally and 2nd nationally in terms of one-year improvement. We're only behind Texas. We're up 15.2%. Now, this is, as I mentioned earlier, there's a lot of work put into this. And this improvement is not by chance. Our agency, along with the Department of Education, the community college system, and Alabama Possible, have been meeting and collaborating regularly since late January, early February to help more students complete the FAFSA. In fact, Dr. Purcell had a meeting with a group of superintendents and principals this morning on FAFSA completion. So we're collectively doing some work to improve our rates. This chart here is a graphic representation of the table that you just saw. And here you can see that the states in yellow have universal FAFSA completion policies. Again, Alabama is only one of a handful of states that have done that. And you can see that it's taken off. We're behind Texas in terms of one-year growth. And we feel like this will definitely help the state moving forward. This slide highlights FAFSA completion percentages in 2-week intervals. As I mentioned earlier, we're about 8.3% of where we were last year. This chart reflects that. And the areas that highlighted are projected numbers. And you can see that we're projected to be at about 62.4% by June. And this is certainly not where we want to be. We want to be at 100%. But if these trends continue, we will outpace our peak completion percentage is about 56% if we step back 2019. So we kind of know where we're going and we're doing some things to make it better. This slide looks at 5 key areas across the state that we've identified with high schools with high enrollment and low FAFSA completion rates. And you can see that these are high schools with completion rates below 45%. And these shaded areas reflect about 35% of the state's high schools and about 63% of the state's high school enrollment. And from what I understand, the Department of Education is now working with Alabama Possible, which is a nonprofit entity in Alabama, to work in these areas and do some target activities and outreach activities to improve FAFSA completion in these areas. So these next few slides were taken from our FAFSA completion portal to show the top school districts and the top high schools across the state. And we intentionally tried to add some competitive elements to the portal. You'll notice that there's some awards for completion percentages. We've also grouped these high schools by classification that mimic their athletic classifications. We try to add, instill some competitiveness there, but so this slide looks at the top 10 districts. I know some of this is a little small for our slides today, but this next slide looks at all high schools as of March the 10th. And I would like to note here, Ramsey High School in Birmingham, they have a 92% completion percentages, and they have actually close to 200 students, which is unusual at this point in the year. So I want to mention them. But then these slides look at the high schools by their classification. These are the 6A schools. These are some of the larger schools. I do want to point out in this slide that I guess that second or third column shows students. That actually should say seniors. Those are the senior class rather than all students. This looks at the 5A schools. Mr. Chairman, I believe I see Dothan down there, number 10. So they're making a run. They consistently been in the top 10 since the start. They're doing well.
Thank you for the arrow.
This is these are the 4A schools. These are the 3A schools. Again, we've got these by academic classification or enrollment classification. And what you'll find, as you would expect, the smaller the enrollments, the better the completion rates. These are the 2A schools. 2A schools, 145 to 209 students. Again, I want to point out that Ramsey High School at the top there is outpacing their 2A peers. Then finally, these are the 1A schools. Most of them are doing exceptionally well because they have, I know they're doing some work, but they also have smaller enrollment. So, but our work with FAFSA has been an important issue, not only for our agency, but for the entire state. And we fully expect to have a record year of FAFSA completion across the state. And again, that's not just by chance. That's a lot of work, a lot of collaboration by a lot of agencies. Mr. Chairman, if there are no questions, please.
I have a couple of questions.
Go ahead.
I want you to back up to that first top 10 slide. It was like the overall, maybe.
Okay.
Right there. If we're going to have to point out, affiliations in hometown, I want to point out number 10, Sylacauga City, right there. I'm glad to see at the bottom.
What, John?
Go back one.
Right there.
Right
So
here?
right there.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Okay.
Top 10. In all seriousness, I was kind of joking about that, but I am pleased. But talk me through, because I have not yet understood what are the consequences. We talk about it's a graduation requirement. Is it truly?
Well, so I'm sure you don't want to weigh in, but students have options. They can complete the FAFSA, or they have a parent waiver in the district.
Okay.
So it's not an absolute.
That was my question on how many waivers have been requested.
So at this point, we're working on getting that waiver data from the Department of Education. That's kind of in process.
Right. And I think the big thing is, the governor really wants more people to go to college. So the emphasis has been, hey, let's complete this thing. Even if you're not sure where you're going to go, let's at least get everybody to apply. We do know that the waivers are important. There are a lot of people who just don't want to share information. We're good with that. I think what we would consider a success is if we have a larger number than we had in previous years. It looks like we're on target to do that. But if we can get up to 70 to 80% of our population having the money to be able to go to college, I think that's going to change our economy, and it'll be just us, raising our own for the economy that we know is growing here. Because without it, they're not going to have the credentials.
So in terms of a local district, local school system, students who do not complete the FAFSA, the only way around that to be able to graduate is to have a waiver.
Right, the parental waiver is the easiest, and then of course, at the end, the superintendent can do a grant dispensation waiver. There may be issues with the parents not wanting to sign or other things, right? And then, as you know, as a school board, you're on the school board there. You'll be concerned about that. I'm sure the superintendent will be actively involved in making that happen. But for us, we just need to communicate, and what Jim just did is, it really does, it sets you up for success.
There's no doubt it's important. We see that even from just collecting vital statistical information and funding in other areas. The other question I had was, is there some kind of sharing of best practices? The school system that's reached above 90%, is there an opportunity for other systems to hear what they're doing? I know in our local district, we're trying to have parent FAFSA meetings, breakfast meetings, coffees at different times of the day, weekends, nights, et cetera. But what are these systems doing that are having such high rates?
We know that there's a lot of outreach efforts going on, particularly with Alabama Possible, which is a state nonprofit
Yeah.
organization. They're doing a lot of those outreach efforts. A lot of it is based on the culture of the high school, the culture of the area. And that's part of it. There are a few barriers that we need to overcome.
I just think it's important if you guys in particular are seeing really good best practices that school systems have a way to learn from each other, you know.
Yeah. I think one thing is our webpage actually allows you to sort of see who your competitors are. And so then they can see this information that you saw
And
today
reach
on
out
the
to each
webpage.
other.
And then to me, the other thing is we have tools. So if a person who's a career coach or a counselor or working in that school district, there are certain people that are qualified to download the individual data. So there'll be a list of all people who still call it high school senior class and whether they filled out a FAFSA. And if they did and there's errors, it'll actually indicate what the errors are. So you don't have to start from scratch. You got a list of maybe 50 people that you need to interact with, and you get them into your office or meet with them outside class and say, what can we do to help you? So there are some tools that I think are very powerful and can help. We've encouraged our campuses to actually help. We said, we reached out to a couple and said, look at your area district, can you help us get a bigger return on this? These guys may be your graduates. And I've had several meetings with campuses recently about that in especially our hotspot areas.
I want to commend you for the partnership. I see it working. One question, what about citizenship? How much does that affect completion of FAFSA?
There's, yeah. I mean, as you know, FAFSA, you have to have a social security number. Basically, the federal government will assign you a social security number if you fill it out. So there is that concern, but there is they'll give you a bogus social security number for you to apply, but I don't know how it impacts your. There is communication that continues back. We do have the list, and we don't just discern between legal, or whether you are American citizen or not. But some of the requirements for many of the scholarships that people are applying for may have limitations. So it is, and we'll be getting these communications. The other thing that Jim's office has been doing, we're now sending direct letters to the school or direct emails to these individual students. And we just did that about 2 weeks ago. And to me, that's why the results went from like 32% to 43% in a week and a half. Is we've got, hey guys, this is the time you need to really think about next year and apply. So that direct intervention, I think, is important. But to me, it's still the one-on-one relationship with career coaches, the high school counselors, and people saying, yeah, hey, college may be for you. And like I was talking to the principals in Montgomery County this morning, and I said, guys, I know that all the magnet schools in Montgomery are at 80% participation, filling out the FAFSA. We know magnet school kids are going to go there, but really it's the rest of the normal of us that went to regular schools that are the population that we want to make sure have access to the skill sets to be successful in our state.
I think the waiver of the in-state university application fee was very helpful.
Yeah, so we're doing lots of things, and I think that's the key.
Excellent. Any other questions for Dr. Hood?
I got one more quick
Yes,
question.
ma'am.
You probably already said this and I didn't catch it. On the graph, when you look at the smaller number in black and white there, so I'm guessing like if you look at number 4, Elba, 70%, what does the 7% represent?
So those numbers in black are those FAFSAs that are in progress or incomplete. Students that started the FAFSA, but for whatever reason they haven't completed.
Okay, very interesting. Thank you. Great information.
Great. Thank you for your comment.
As a statement, I want to thank Dr. Michelle for working with the state legislators, and hopefully we'll see a tremendous improvement in these numbers based on the application.
Yep. Mr. Chairman, we are done with our part. Now we're open to discussion items.
Dr. Purcell, thank you. Ms. Margaret Gunter will present the current legislative updates. Fun, fun, fun.
And that was a great segue into the legislative update. Thank you, Representative Scott, talking about us working with the legislature. They came to Montgomery exactly 2 months ago today. They stayed for a little while. The governor called them into special session before January was over to decide how they were going to spend $1 billion in COVID money. You can see from this chart, the majority of it went to broadband and to water and sewage infrastructure. And then the next largest increment went to healthcare. We've seen last year, Connect Alabama was passed by the legislature, dealing with broadband and expanding it. Recall the pandemic, it kind of threw things into chaos when students had to go home for remote learning. So we've seen a lot of work that has been done along the lines of expanding broadband and taking it into areas of the state that did not have access. So the legislature this year has taken up several bills. They have passed a couple dealing with just that measure of broadband expansion. Then let's talk about what we're doing in the regular session. Well, money, money, money. This was the first session for Danny Garrett as chairman of the House Ways and Means Education Committee. So he cautioned, in fact, I think his quote there, I think it's no secret that we're sitting on a mountain of cash. In fact, when he made the budget presentation to the committee members, with those of us in attendance, he said that some comments had been made around the state that they were spending money like drunken sailors. But he did caution lawmakers that, a lot of times you make your worst decisions when times are good and you have a lot of cash. So of course, this large amount of money comes from COVID funds that have come into the state. And keep in mind, we have not seen the end of that federal money. We'll be seeing more COVID funds coming in later this summer. The legislature has already had 2 special sessions to address the spending and the allocation of these funds. And possibly they'll do one another this fall, or it could wait until next regular session. But the next regular session of the lawmakers will not begin until March 12th of next year, because it will be the beginning of a new quadrennium. And they will be looking at new committee assignments and an organizational meeting for the new legislators. So how did everybody fare? Well, a lot of this money is going back to the classroom. When we talk about projects like FAFSA and things that we'll hear about, and you've got a presentation coming about one of the great needs in the state, social workers, we're talking about individuals. So how is this money being spent? Well, when it goes back to the classroom, we're talking about teacher training. We're talking about classroom supplies. We're talking about technology needs. So, and we all know, we're well aware of the teacher shortage, and there are a lot of efforts underway to get more teachers in the classroom and to get teachers to remain in the classroom. So higher ed fared well. You see the increases there. Community college system, 7.88%, 8.79% increase for the state universities, and 4% pay raises for state employees and for teachers. The next session, let's look at what we've got in the helping pay for college category. So if you go back to the helping pay for college, the student grant program. Let me say that when Dr. Purcell came in 2017, he and I sat down and we talked about what are the needs of the state, what can we do? And of course, a focus that, and I will say this, since I came here, this agency has focused so much on student success. I'm just going to say every program that you all have approved, and Commissioner Price, thank you for your comments about looking at the individual programs and how are they filtering down to the classroom, which in turn to the student. Once they leave that classroom, once they get their degree, how successful are they? Well, I will say that paying for college is at the top of everybody's list. That's one of the things about with FAFSA, this Pell money that's left on the table. We need to be doing everything that we can to get these students to take advantage of this money. And then on the state level, the Alabama Student Assistance Program. When Dr. Purcell and I had this discussion, he said, we have got the first order of business when you go on the Hill is to increase funding for this program. This is our need-based program. So when he came in 2017, we had just over $2 million. And this year, if this budget goes as we hope that it does for this increase, it will be up to $8 million. Now, when I first started lobbying over at, on the Hill, somebody told me, Margaret, if anything bad happens, get far away. But anything good, you take credit for it. So thank you. And in the minutes, if you would, I would take full credit for that. And we've also seen with the student grant program, that has increased also to $8 million. And that's for students who are choosing to go to the private schools. The police officers, the firefighters, student assistance program, we brought a bill before the legislature last year that did increase the pool for applicants who could receive that funding. And that too has seen an increase. The governor has already signed a package of military bills. The National Guard, we were able to get an increase in funding, as you can see from the chart, for that program as well. What's new in the budget? Well, the FAFSA completion project that Dr. Hood mentioned, that $500,000 will mainly go for software licensing costs. Now, the STEM major recruitment, teacher recruitment program, I put something at your places. You Teach is what this program is known as. It has been around for quite some time in the States. It is at UAB, and you will see some successful numbers at UAB where they've done this. The STEM Council has been doing a lot, again, not just to get people to go into teaching STEM subjects, but to stay in it. This is where we need for our experienced, our STEM teachers to stay in place. If you recall, in 2018, AMSTEP, we took that across the hill and got that passed. And this is to address math and science teachers, the original legislation, those particularly in underserved areas. And we started out with a focus on the high school teachers to help pay down their student loans. The next year, we added computer science to that. And then the next year, of course, COVID hit and everything fell apart. But last year, we went back and we said, look, we've got the money for this. We're not asking for more money. We just need to expand the applicant pool. So we dropped it from high school down to include middle school teachers, also for teachers who were living outside of Alabama, but who were willing to come in and teach in Alabama classrooms, and several other ways. So the legislature said, that's fine, we'll do that. We are looking at every way possible that we can to increase STEM teaching in our schools. We know that there are a lot of underserved areas where there is just a critical shortage in those areas. So with this, as you look through that information, we're looking at, there will be an RFP process where 4 universities geographically located across the state will be able to participate in the You Teach program. And then the last one, the HBCU Deferred Maintenance Program. Alabama has the largest number of HBCUs in the country. 6 of those are in the community college system. This money will be used for repairing existing structures. It is not for new structures, not for anything new coming out. And then let's start talking about some bills. Well, one is the numeracy bill. The numeracy bill was brought forth by Senator Orr to help to increase proficiency in math for K-5 students. It creates an Office of Mathematics Improvement in the State Department, and then it has math coaches located throughout the state. There will be 2 task forces put together, one addressing elementary needs, the other post-secondary. AICS involvement will come in, that we will have appointments to both of those, as well as we will be required to produce a report. December 31 each year will be the deadline to show the improvement in the guidelines that have been set forth and how we're really tackling the math issue. This came on the heels of the Literacy Alliance. The Literacy Alliance, if you recall, was passed in 2019. Again, everything dates pre or post-COVID. So the next year threw kind of a kink in that as far as promoting students that address 3rd grade level reading skills, but then whether or not to promote them on to 4th grade or to hold them back. So this time we're seeing some technical changes that are being introduced. We've got 2 bills running Representative Terry Collins had been a real advocate for literacy, and she's got a bill in the House that's gone the whole way there. And then Senator Roger Smitherman has a bill in the Senate that has gone through that. So we'll keep a track on that and see where we go with that. Open meetings. I know some of you have asked about Zooming continuously. Well, there is a bill up and there's one step left to go. It has to go to the House floor to determine about virtual meetings. Now, let me say this. If this passes, it does not, the board itself can determine if you want to meet remotely or if you want to come together. But according to this bill, we still would have to have 3 individuals who are present on site to conduct business. But the bill reads that the public would still be able to hear it. And if you did not come, you would not be able to collect your mileage and per diem. I hate to be the bearer of bad news because I know you've been pocketing that world cruise you've been planning, but keep that in mind that that is one of the things that we'll see. But one more step, and I'll let you know as soon as that we know more about it. Again, on AMSTEP, I thought you'd never see this again, but there have been some changes in the allocations. As I mentioned, we have made changes as far as the participants because we want to use the money that the legislature has allocated in our for us. But, you know, we have not done that as much. So this year in committee this week, it changed the allocations per student. Now, you recall last year, we saw this same formula for the student grant program. They just upped the ante for individual students. So this would take it from $2,500 per semester to $3,750 per semester. And then the state seal of biliteracy has been around for a while. This is another one of Representative Collins' measures. It recognizes high school graduates who are proficient in English and another world language. Sign language is included. My last slide, man, you don't know the tears that I shed. The first one I had up there, Commissioner Singleton confirmed by Alabama Senate. And day by day, I have watched as he kind of slipped out of that category. Started last Wednesday. He was on the agenda at the confirmation committee meeting, went through, not a problem. Typically, those confirmations will be taken to the floor the next day. Well, the problem with the floor, it was the floor of the state Senate. And since last Thursday, they have had more than a few disagreements. So we've not been able to take confirmations. So anyway, keep a good thought with me, would you please? If you're gonna have them, you're gonna be a real deal. But I just want to say a personal thank you to Commissioner Singleton. As pointed out, he is a CPA who owns his own business. And it is March 11th. What are you doing here? So on that, we will adjourn very quickly and let you get back to those little hours. Mr. Chairman, that's all I have. There are not any questions, or I'll be happy to. We know we've got the man here, it's right down on the floor, Representative Scott. However, you're not in the thick of the action. If you were upstairs in the Senate, you would really have stories to tell.
Any questions for Mrs. Gilman?
I'd like to say thank you. I have seen and heard, and you do great work, and I've seen it personally, and I think.
Barbara, thank you. Love your enthusiasm.
Well, you gotta have it if you work on the Hill.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you so much. The next discussion item will be presented by Dr. Dawn Nelson. Good to have you.
And Mr. Chairman, as she comes up, I just wanted to introduce the people that help work on this. Bryn Bakayama will not be speaking today, but you saw her get to speak a few months back on the shortage in K through 12 teachers. And so she is our visiting research associate, and Donna Nelson is actually our brand new NAEP fellow. She's got a great background, studied everywhere, but started right here in Montgomery at Alabama State, and now has come back after being a rock star all over the world to work in her at her home school. And we're excited about the research we're doing, and I'll pass it over to Donna to present.
Thank you so much for that wonderful introduction, and thank you all for having the opportunity to be here today to talk about our social work graduates and our social work workforce in the state of Alabama. So what I want to do is start off talking where we are in terms of social education, social work education, just a quick recap. We have 11 social work accredited programs in the state of Alabama that are Bachelor of Social Work, and we have 7 Master of Social Work programs. The data that we're going to present today is going to focus on the programs that are highlighted in yellow and green. But before we go forward, what I want us to do is take a look back at the progression of social work education in the state of Alabama. When the Council on Social Work Education first began accrediting programs, we had 2 Master of Social Work programs for a majority of the time from the 60s until the early 2000s. This kind of reflects national data, so it's not anything abnormal. But in the last 15 years, mimicking national rates, we have seen that our MSW programs have more than doubled. And we're also seeing a steady progression of ESW programs since the 1990s. So we are seeing corresponding enrollment social work changes. So in the early 2000s, or in 2000, 1 out of 4 social work program enrollees was enrolled in a Master of Social Work program. And now in 2020, 1/3 of our social work enrollees are enrolled in MSW programs. And we are seeing corresponding completion rates in social work. In the last 20 years, we have nearly tripled the number of social work graduates that we have. And you can see the growth of social work graduates in the master's programs is growing, corresponding to the increase in the number of programs that we have in our state. However, we still have a shortage of social work in specific areas. We need social workers in the areas of mental health and substance abuse treatment. We anticipate to see a 16% increase in those areas by 2025. And we also have a need for healthcare setting social workers. So what we did was we took some data from various entities within the state to be able to compose an employment outcome data set, to be able to look a little bit further into our social work workforce here in the state of Alabama. This was a partnership between the Alabama Commission on Higher Education, the Alabama Department of Labor, and the Alabama Social Work Board. AIC was able to provide the major year of graduation and demographic information for our graduates within a specific time frame. We then coupled that data with Department of Labor data that indicated their employer type, the year that they were employed, and their wages for that specific time frame. And finally, the Alabama Social Work Board took a look at that data set and identified those individuals who had attained a license, the type of license that they had attained, and the year that they had gotten that license. A couple of caveats that I want to discuss in relationship to the workforce data. The Alabama Department of Labor workforce data includes employees who are reported for unemployment insurance, but it does not include those employees who are self-employed, working for the military, federally employed, work out of state, or are not receiving or eligible to receive unemployment insurance. So people in private practice might not be captured in the data set. For this study, we also excluded individuals who made under $5,000 because we wanted to exclude those people who might be seasonal or occasional workers. Talking a little bit more about the licensure data, the Alabama Social Work Board provided that matching for our graduates to be able to identify people who have a social work license that graduated from one of our public universities with a social work degree. This is really important because we need to be able to look at and identify the employment and subsequent wages that are correlated to licensure attainment for social workers. But I do want to make a note that we looked at just a simple time frame, a small snippet of the total number of social workers who are licensed within our state. So it does not reflect the number of licensed social workers that we have here in the state of Alabama. So with this data set, we created 2 questions. First, we wanted to know, are social work majors from the 14 public universities more likely to be found working in the Alabama workforce? And then we wanted to explore if there were any differences by degree, level, gender, or ethnicity. Our second research question was, for those who are found in the Alabama workforce, are there employer type differences by degree level, wage differences by degree level or employer type or wage differences by their licensure status? And so our data set created 2 subsets. Our first subset was looking at graduates 1 year after their receipt of their social work degree. And our second subset looked at social work graduates 5 years after they earned their degree. For this particular presentation, I'm going to focus primarily on subset 2, which is our 5-year population, but sometimes I'm going to use points of reference to compare the 1-year and 5-year degree earners. So in response to question number 1, when we took a look at our graduates from 2015, 16, and 17, 2,157 people who attained a social work degree, 69% of them were found working in the Alabama economy 1 year after their graduation. When we looked at our 5-year degree recipients, these are people who received their degrees in 2011, 12, and 13, 62% of them were found working in the Alabama workforce. So this tells us that there is a high likelihood of social work graduates to be working in the state of Alabama. And this mimics what we know about degree recipients as a whole in the state of Alabama. Bachelor of Social Work recipients who work in public administration and social services at 1 year post-degree attainment are really likely to be seen still here and retained in the Alabama economy. And this persists at the 5-year mark, but we actually see that social workers that fall into that public administration and social service, they're even more likely to be found still retained here in the Alabama workforce economy. So once we determined whether or not social workers were retained, we wanted to know if there were any differences demographically. At the 5-year subset, the 90% of the social work graduates who were found employed in our workforce identify as female. Now this mimics national data. In 2015, 83% of all degree recipients were women. So women are overly represented in social work profession. When we take a look at the racial and ethnic breakdown of our recipients, we see that it mimics our state demographics. Now, nationally, it looks a little different. About 20% of the social work workforce identifies as African American, but still African Americans, Hispanics are overrepresented in the social work workforce. So we have more people of color in our profession. About half of the social workers found in the state of Alabama identify as white, half identify as African American, and 3% identify as other minority, which is composed of Hispanic, American Indian, people who identify as Asian, as well as our international students. They represent a small sample, or portion of our sample, and so they have been excluded from future analyses. So let's take a look at the social work graduates who are working in Alabama. A couple of key trends that I want to make note of. Females or women are more likely to be found working in the state of Alabama. The percentage of African American and white graduates staying in Alabama is the same, and there is a lower percentage of other minorities who remain in our workforce, but thinking back about the end of that, the sample is so small that I would be hesitant to make any inferences about a statistical significance here. Bachelor of Social Work graduates are most likely to be found in our Alabama workforce, followed closely by MSW graduates. And though we didn't report how many doctoral students there were included in those graduates, they were the least likely, but I do want to caveat that that also is a small n. So on average, we had no more than 7 PhD recipients in any given year. Okay, so because Alabama is composed of 11 counties in the rural Black Belt that are identified as high need, so areas that have had economic disparities, higher comorbidities, and they have a critical shortage of healthcare providers, we wanted to be able to look at geographically where our social workers are practicing. So what we did was take a look at the areas where social workers are practicing 1 year after degree completion by their race ethnicity. What we see is that rural social workers in the data set, of the rural social workers in our data set who practice in those rural counties, nearly 2/3 of them identify as white. We also see that other counties, which are, for example, Shelby County, a county that is more identified as a suburban area, are more likely to have white social workers as well. And African American social workers are more likely to work in urban areas. Now, when we pull that back and we take a look at the 5-year mark, we do see an increase in the number of African American social workers who are employed in those rural areas. We continue to see that our other counties, our suburban counties, continue to have a lower number of African Americans that are working at in those counties. So let's kind of see where we are. So out of all of our graduates that we have here in the state of Alabama, we see that 69% of them are found working in the Alabama workforce 1 year after graduation. We're going to talk a little bit about where they're working, but 58% of them are working within the social work area 1 year after graduation. At 5 years after graduation, 62% of them are found working in the state of Alabama, and 53% of those individuals are working in a social work related career field. So what we want to do now is start talking about what are those social work related career fields? Where specifically are our social workers working? We divided our employers into 9 categories. Many of them are composed of different agencies or entities that employ social workers, broken into kind of categories. But if you take notice of number 4, the Department of Human Resources, well, that's just one agency. The reason is because they employ so many of our social workers. And we wanted to be able to identify any nuances or differences or trends in wages and licensure and employment within our social work graduates. The other thing I want to take note of is number 9, other sectors. And this is just to provide a little caveat about the nature of our data. So retail, restaurants, clerical, temporary, we can kind of assume that those people are not operating within the purview of their scope of practice. They might not be operating as social workers. However, there are some employers that were included in other sectors that we are not sure of. For example, Hyundai, who is a manufacturing entity that falls under other sectors, actually does employ licensed social workers. But because we do not know the employee roles specifically related to the Department of Labor data, what we have done is collapse them by their employer types rather than their roles. So just a small caveat to when we're looking at our data. So first, let's start off by taking a look at where our social work graduates are working by their degree type. Just mentioned DHR, Bachelor of Social Workers. 1 out of 5 of them who is found working in the state of Alabama is working for DHR 5 years after graduation. Now, if you take a look at other sectors, almost 1 out of 5 is also not working in social work. They're employed in some other sector, which shows that there might be some form of attrition happening for our BSWs at that level. When we look at our MSWs are more likely to be found in hospital clinics and mental health, substance use treatment are areas for critical need. And then we do see that at the other sectors level, we see a drop in the number of individuals. So this is what we expect to see. There is less attrition happening at the graduate level. So let's take a look now at our employers, where our graduates are working by race ethnicity. So white graduates, social work graduates are working at a higher percentage at hospital clinics, elderly disabled, and in the mental health substance use treatment employer types. African-American graduates are working higher at DHR and in child and youth. So of course we want to know, are there differences within these employer types? And do those differences persist by degree level? And the reason that we want to know this is because when we take a look at all of the bachelor degree recipients within Alabama, within the state of Alabama, we see that social workers falling under the public administration and social service degree recipients are falling within that bottom 1/3 of all earners 1 year after their degree completion. And then when we take a look even further out at the 5-year mark, they have fallen to the bottom of the earners, which means that even though we're seeing a little bit of growth, it's in no way compared to other degree holders. So we really need to know what types of employers and where the earnings are. When we look at our highest earning areas, they are the same for both BSW and MSW degree holders. The Department of Human Resources, Education, and hospital clinics are the highest areas. For BSWs, this means making around somewhere between the mid-30s, $30,000 range. And for MSWs, this is the low to mid $40,000 range. Now, our lowest sectors for a BSW is child and youth, mental health and substance use treatment, which is one of our key areas for growth, and other sectors, which we anticipate to see that people will not be making as much money if they're working outside their degree area. And that persists at the MSW level. So people working in mental health, substance use, one of the key areas where we need more social workers, are making the lowest, with MSW centered around a low $30,000. At BSW level, the median income is about $32,000. At the MSW, the median income is about $39,000. So we do see a difference in the wages across BSW and MSW, which tells us that the graduate degree has value. So now let's take a look and further dissect this by licensure and see where people are working if they have a license and the corresponding wages that they're earning. So a couple of key trends that we identified when we were looking at social work licensure: a higher percentage of white graduates than African-American graduates have obtained their license. MSW graduates are more likely than BSW graduates to have obtained a license, which we anticipate to see, and it's consistent with national trends. The largest number of licensed graduates work in two entities, hospital clinic and DHR. For the BSWs, over half of the licensed BSWs are employed by DHR in the state. And 2/3 of the MSW graduates who have a license are employed by either DHR or they're working in some clinical capacity. So does this correspond to wages? Well, at the 1-year mark, yes. At 1 year, we can see that not having a license equates to earning lower wages than being a licensed bachelor of social work. And at the highest earnings, we have our licensed master social worker. Now, in social work, there is an advanced license, a licensed independent clinical social worker, which requires 2 years of direct clinical supervised practice, post-degree attainment, and you have to take an advanced licensure exam. And so we obviously can't include them in the 1-year sample because they haven't had time to get there. But when we look at the 2-year sample or the 5-year sample, what we see is those same trends that we want to see, where having a license and having a more advanced license equates to earning more. But we don't see that trend happening at the LICSW level. So people who have the advanced license are not earning more than people who are licensed master social workers. And so we'll talk in a moment about some reasons why that might be. So what did we find? Well, overall, we found that a large proportion of social work graduates are found in Alabama, and that a large proportion of those social work graduates are found working in social work related employers. Social workers who earn a graduate degree are compensated at higher wages, indicating that the higher degree is of value to them. And obtaining a licensure generally also equates to additional compensation, especially if you're working in a profession that has a clinical requirement. But we did also find that the licensure rates within our data set were low, on the lower end. And overall, the wages for social workers were compressed at the lower end of middle class. And what is especially relevant to that is that for those high demand fields, substance use and mental health, they were at the lowest end. So this can reflect that we're having difficulty recruiting people to work in these high demand areas. It also might be why we see some attrition from the field. So what do we do about it? The policy recommendations, reflecting back on the geographic location of social workers. One thing that we can do is incentivize the diversification of the social work profession in regards to those critical shortage areas. So in the same way that other medical professions have provided incentives to have their providers go and practice in rural areas, we should do the same for social work. We also need to incentivize obtaining the licensure and address the passage rates in the state of Alabama. So if we look at the passage rates for the license exam nationally, over the last 5 years, there has been a steady decline. More people nationally, or fewer people nationally, are passing the license exam on the first try. That trend is happening in Alabama too. But one of the reasons that it's important for us to address these passage rates is because Alabama will already had a lower passage rate. So we need to kind of catch up and not see the same trend that they're seeing nationally. So what we can do is we can have governments, universities, and employers work together to, one, recruit more students. So as we see our growing programs, we want to have more students to be able to enroll in social work so that 5 years from now, we have the available people to enter into the workforce. We also want to advocate that our salaries are commensurate with the cost of the degrees and the cost of obtaining the licensure. And then finally, we really need to advocate for those critical need areas, that we're able to have a salary that is commensurate with the areas that we need and the type of work that people are performing in mental health, substance abuse, as well as in child and youth work. And finally, you'll notice this one is in italics because it's something that we've already started working on, which is to revise the state laws to expand for the allowable roles of social workers to meet the workforce needs of Alabama. So when we take a look at the licensed independent clinical social worker trends that we saw with the wages, one of the interesting things about Alabama that is distinctly different from the other 49 states as individuals who are licensed as independent clinical social workers is that in the state of Alabama, we are not able to diagnose in our area of expertise, which means that our scope of practice is limited. If you work in depression, typically in other states, you would be able to diagnose depression. If you work in PTSD, which I do, in Hawaii, I was able to diagnose people with PTSD. And that is not something that we are able to do here in the state of Alabama, which thereby has a larger impact on the behavioral health providers that we have available, especially in those critical shortage areas that we talked about. So, Mr. Chairman, thank you for the opportunity, and I yield.
Absolutely. Any questions for Dr. Nelson?
I think the one thing for us, and great presentation, is, what we saw with the education presentation is, we're going to lose a third of our of our teachers in the next 5 years. It's a big chunk of loss. What we saw here is the 15% shortage. And what we're trying to do is get ahead of this crisis, because the teacher education programs cost a lot of money just to try to fix what the current crisis is. In this situation, we know where to go. We need to expand the laws to allow them to practice and actually make money out of it, which they can do by billing. And then the other is just working with our campuses to improve the pass rates and make sure their curriculum aligns with what the state needs.
Thank you, Dr. Nelson. That was wonderful. Thank you. We will now move into decision items, and I just want to remind the commissioners that each decision item will be voted on individually. Any questions may be directed to the staff presenter. The first decision, item 1A, will be presented by Dr. Robin McGill, Athens State University Master of Arts in Interdisciplinary Studies.
All right, thank you, Chairman. As you said, Athens State University is proposing a new program in interdisciplinary studies. They do have an existing program at the baccalaureate level, so this will extend the similar structures to the master's level. They're using the same infrastructure in terms of staffing to do that. We've heard a couple of different proposals for interdisciplinary master's degrees over 2 years, specifically one from UA and UAB. And Athens State is proposing something similar that would be potentially able to accommodate graduate certificates into a combined course of study. Athens State's program is also a little more flexible, and they're allowing graduates to identify different coursework at the graduate level and work with program faculty to put together their own individualized major. Because there is existing graduate coursework that would be combined, they don't need any additional funding for this program or any additional faculty. And staff is recommending approval for the program.
Excellent. Chair entertains a motion to approve the staff recommendation.
So moved.
We have a motion and a second to approve. Any questions or comments? All in favor of approving, say aye.
Aye.
And all opposed, like sign. The program is approved. Athens State University's second decision, item 1B, will be presented by Dr. Robin McGill, Master of Accountancy in Accounting.
All right, thank you, Chairman. And I was pleased to learn that several of you in the commission are CPA, so I'm sure you have specific expertise on this one. Athens State is proposing to extend their baccalaureate level programs in accountancy to the master's level. The existing programs at the baccalaureate level do have specialized accounting accreditation through the Accreditation Council for Business Schools and Programs, ACBSC. Athens State is proposing a similar accreditation for their master's program if it's approved today. It's designed to prepare individuals for licensure as CPAs. And there would be a modest increase of funding for additional library resources that they would be able to leverage existing faculty. And there, as you know, a strong demand to continue for accountants, auditors, and financial managers. And this program would help support that in the northern part of the state. Our staff is recommending approval.
Excellent. Chair entertains a motion to approve the staff recommendation.
So,
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve. Any questions or comments? All in favor of approving, say aye. And all opposed, like sign. The program is approved. The next decision, item 2, will be presented by Dr. Robin McGill, University of Alabama at Birmingham, Doctor of Philosophy in Mechanical Engineering.
All right, thank you, Chairman. University of Alabama at Birmingham is proposing this PhD in mechanical engineering as part of their School of Engineering doctoral offerings, of which there are many. UAB's College of Engineering has a Bachelor of Mechanical Engineering, and Masters of Mechanical Engineering, and they are proposing to extend that to the doctoral level, primarily so that they can attract and recruit very competitive faculty and students. In bringing forward this proposal, they secured letters of support from the other institutions in the state who have PhDs in mechanical engineering, which include Auburn, University of Alabama, and University of Alabama Huntsville. So those institutions recognize the quality of this program and the need for additional mechanical engineering programs in the states. There are some new funds for new faculty and startup laboratories for those faculty. Also new funds for graduate assistantships, but those are projected to be offset by extramural funding, so research funding that would come in to support those graduate students. And there would only be 60 courses because of the strength of the department already. And staff is recommending approval for this program.
Thank you. The chair entertains a motion to approve the staff recommendation.
So moved. Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve. Any questions or comments? All in favor of approving, say aye. All opposed, like sign. The program is approved. The next decision, item 3, will be presented by Dr. Robin McGill, University of Alabama in Huntsville, Bachelor of Science in Child, Family, and Community Development.
Okay, thank you, Julie. This Bachelor of Science in Child, Family, and Community Development would have 2 concentrations. One is a leadership in early learning track, and the second is recreation and community leadership track. Both of those would share a common core that consists of new coursework in nonprofit, youth, community leadership, and then concentration coursework would be delivered by the Department of the College of Education in the case of early learning, and then by the Department of Kinesiology in the case of recreation and community leadership. There would be additional new funds required to support one new faculty member in each concentration, and the program is not intended to lead to certification. Packaging existing coursework into 5 concentrations, which are STEAM for early learners, diversity, equity, and inclusion, language and literacy, educational psychology and research, and finally exercise and nutrition science. The goal for the non-certification master's programs is preparing individuals and educators in non-school settings. So this would be working as corporate trainers, as nonprofit educators, as self-enrichment education teachers, which you might find in museums and zoos. There are no new resources for this program, and staff is recommending approval.
And they're saying there's a demand for this.
Both of those, so you can see that this leads to occupational training and development specialists. That's normally what you see in corporate or profit world, or self-enrichment education teachers. Both of those are in our in-demand occupations list. I can't necessarily, speak off the top of my head to the wages for those positions, but they are in.
Thank you. The chair entertains a motion to approve the staff recommendation.
So moved. Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve. Any questions or comments? All in favor of approving, say aye.
Aye.
program up in that northwest sector of Region 1 of the state. So it definitely would be sort of need there. Because the field is in allied health, we see what we might expect here, which is there's a significant startup cost for the program to get trained faculty, equipment, and other consumable resources to deliver the program. University of North Alabama is expecting this program to be self-sufficient by year 6, but it will require that initial startup. It does also require specialized accreditation for graduates to practice in the field and achieve a license in the state of Alabama. And that accreditation is done through the Commission on Accreditation for Respiratory Care, or so we've placed an additional post-implementation condition on the program that they achieve that specialized accreditation in the period, which you would typically see also in any program similar to this, even at the associate level. There are significant support for the program, including from UAB's hospital, and staff is recommending it.
Thank you. Chair entertains a motion to approve the staff recommendation.
So moved. Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve. Any questions or comments?
A quick question.
Yes, sir.
Do you think we have sufficient demand, or will we be working with other states?
Sufficient demand for graduates? Oh, yes, they're not going to have any trouble finding
Right.
jobs.
What's reallocation from where?
Internal reallocation means that it's, the university has some kind of reserves that they are using, or that there is some kind of new program funded. There are some folks from UNA here, I don't know if they know where it might be reallocated.
That's okay.
But yes, so the university has
That's
decided
your own
that
money putting in.
they're putting in their own money. We saw this in the previous meeting with Auburn's kinesiology program. They also have that.
Any other questions or comments? All in favor of approving, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. Program is approved. The University of North Alabama, second decision item 5D will be presented by Dr. Robin McGill, Doctor of Nursing Practice in Nursing.
Doctor of Nursing Practice, DNP in nursing. This would extend the University of North Alabama's offerings in nursing from the master's level, which they've had since 2006, to the doctorate level, and that's partly because the profession is moving that direction. We all know there are a shortage of nurses, and nurses who are trained at the DNP level are able to be nursing faculty members and also nurse practitioners. And both of those positions help support expansion of the nursing pipeline throughout the state. I should note this program would be the third doctorate for the University of North Alabama. They are, as of right now, a master's granting institution, but they do have 2 existing doctorates. Because this is their third, they would need to apply for a full change to have a 4th. So just know that if they want another one, will come forward and have to do a much more extensive review of the institutional evaluation. At this level, the doctorate needs to show that it has a strategic benefit for the state, meaning that there's a strong need for it and that it's somehow unique in its offering. Some of which has to do with its location, again, being in that northwest corner of the state. There are no other DNP programs. I guess the closest one would be at UA. And they are offering 3 tracks, 2 of which are not offered elsewhere. So the 3 tracks are advanced practice nursing, and then population health with a concentration in simulation, and education leadership, also with a concentration in simulation. And those simulations are immersive, simulated workplace experiences that are necessary for nursing trainees. All right. Again, as a healthcare program, this one does have specialized accreditation available from the Commission of Collegiate Nursing Education, CCNE. We placed an extra post-implementation condition on the program to show progress toward that accreditation. So with that, staff is recommending approval for the program.
Thank you. The chair entertains a motion to approve the staff recommendation.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve. Any questions or comments? All in favor of approving, say aye.
Aye.
And all opposed, like sign. The program is approved. The next decision, item 6A, will be presented by Dr. Robin McGill, University of South Alabama, Bachelor of Science in Environmental Science and Sustainability.
Thank you, Chairman, and I'll give a quick overview of this program in combination with the next one, Bachelor of Science in Marine Sciences. Both of these are proposed new offerings in the School of Marine and Environmental Sciences, which the commission just approved as a new instruction for USA probably about a year ago. USA does have graduate programs in both of these fields, and they are proposing to extend those graduate programs down to undergraduate level. So for this first one, a Bachelor of Science in Environmental Science and Sustainability, there are graduate programs in marine conservation, environmental toxicology, and this would be a partner program. University of South Alabama is proposing significant investment in new faculty for this program to grow their overall environmental science footprints, especially focused on the coastal area and the Delta regions. And we are putting an additional post-implementation condition on the program that the existing BS in biology, which has a, there is a track in environmental science. That program continues to maintain viability even when environmental science becomes its own focus. So with that, I'll say that staff recommends approval of the program.
Thank you. Chair entertains a motion to approve the staff recommendation.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve. Any questions or comments? All in favor of approving, say aye.
Aye.
And all opposed, like sign. Program is approved. University of South Alabama, second decision, item 6B, will be presented by Dr. Robin McGill, Bachelor of Science in Marine Sciences.
Okay, and this program, like I mentioned before, extends existing master's, and in this case, doctoral offerings in marine science down to the baccalaureate level. And there also is an existing track in marine science or marine biology, excuse me, in the biology degree. And so they choose to go into this new degree rather than the old one, given the different purpose. So we have placed an additional post-implementation conditions in the other one. But because there are existing faculty resources to support doctoral level education, there's no new resources that are requested for this program. And staff is recommending.
Thank you. Chair entertains a motion to approve the staff recommendation.
So moved. Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve. Any questions or comments? All in favor of approving, say aye.
Aye.
And all opposed, like sign. The program is approved. Dr. McGill, thank you for everything. And the next decision, item 7A, will be presented by Mrs. Kristen White.
Good morning.
Chattahoochee Valley Community College, Associate of Applied Science, and Short-Term Certificate in Emergency Medical Services. Paramedic.
Yes. So Chattahoochee Valley is projecting annual average new enrollment of around 10 for this program. It will prepare graduates to be paramedics, emergency medical technicians, and firefighters, and all of these are included on the statewide demand list. In 2019, the Office of Emergency Medical Services conducted a site visit at Chattahoochee's existing EMT program, and in their after action report, they stated that they believe that the college could be the premier training facility for the area. So that's the visit and the report resulted in Chattahoochee wanting to expand their existing paramedic program. The college is projecting $260,000 in new funds over the first 7 years. The majority of this will be used to hire additional clerical staff, which is a requirement for accreditation through the Commission on Accreditation of Allied Health Education Programs. And they are anticipating the program will generate $1.3 million through tuition. Staff recommending approval of this program.
Thank you. The chair entertains a motion to approve the staff recommendation.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve. Any questions or comments? All in favor of approving, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. Program is approved. Chattahoochee Valley Community College, second decision, item 7D will be presented by Ms. Kristen White, Associate of Applied Science and Medical Laboratory Technician.
Thank you. Chattahoochee Valley is also projecting an average of 10 enrollment, average annual enrollment for this program, which will prepare graduates for employment as medical clinical laboratory technicians and technologists, both of which are also included on the statewide exam list. This program was initiated from discussions with local healthcare facilities and workforce regional councils who saw the need for the program in the area and the demand. The college already has strong partnerships with local healthcare facilities that they use for currently for clinical sites for their existing programs. They will seek accreditation to the National Accrediting Agency for Clinical Laboratory Sciences for the program. And once accredited, graduates will be able to sit for the Medical Laboratory Technician certification exam offered by the American Society of Clinical Pathology. Certification is not required in the state of Alabama, but it is Florida preferred, so it's important to have it. The college is projecting $602,000 in new funds over the first 7 years. The majority of this will be used to hire a full-time employee to serve as both the director of the program and a full-time faculty member. And then they will hire an additional adjunct faculty member as the program grows. They're expecting it to generate $464,000 through tuition and will require $154,000 supplemental funding in the first 3 years until the and the counter. That's recommending approval of this program.
Thank you. Chair entertains a motion to approve the staff recommendation.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve. Any questions or comments? All in favor of approving, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. Program is approved. The next decision, item 8, will be presented by Mrs. Kristen White, Gadsden State Community College, Associate of Applied Science and Certificate in Dental Assistant.
All right, Gadsden State is projecting annual average new enrollment of 17 for this program. This will address a local and regional need for dental assistants in the area, as that is an aging workforce that is aging out, so they need lots of replacement. The proposal did include 5 letters of support from local employers who attested to the need for this program. The college will seek specialized accreditation through the Commission on Dental Accreditation. Licensure is, again, not required in the state of Alabama, but it is preferred. Students will also be prepared for the Certified Dental Assistant exam administered by the Dental Assistant National Board that complete the program. The college is projecting almost $800,000 in new funds over the first 7 years, the majority of which will be used to hire a full-time employee to serve as both the program administrator and full-time faculty member. They anticipate the program will generate around $1.4 million through tuition. Staff is recommending approval of this program.
It's the same thing as a dental hygienist or.
Yes.
Chair entertains a motion to approve the staff recommendation.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve. Any questions or comments? All in favor of approving, say aye.
Aye.
And all opposed, like sign. Program is approved. The last decision, item number 9, will be presented by Mrs. Kristen White. Lorraine B. Wallace Community College, Associate of Applied Science and Building Construction.
All right, LEW is projecting average student enrollment of around 26 for this proposed associate degree in building construction. The program will prepare graduates for employment as construction trade workers and laborers, carpenters, and construction managers, all of which are included on the statewide in-demand list, in addition to the demand list for Region 6 and 7. LBW conducted a local industry survey, and 100% of respondents said that they would hire graduates from this program with construction training. The school's existing construction-related programs, which include welding and industrial electronics, are currently the largest technical programs at the school. And they also have a large dual enrollment and they receive a lot of support from the local high school. They intend to seek accreditation through the American Council for Construction Education within the next 5 years. In order to apply, they must have at least one graduating class. So they'll be able to apply in 2024. They're projecting a little over 900,000 in new funds over the first 7 years, and the majority of this will be used to hire full-time faculty members for the program. They anticipate it will generate almost 900,000 through tuition and supplemental funds of 211,000 will be required in the first 3 years to support the program. Staff is recommended for this program.
Thank you. Brock, sorry, we had you last on the agenda, but you just had to stick with us. I'm sorry about that. Chair entertains a motion to approve the staff recommendation.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve. Any questions or comments? All in favor of approving, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. The program is approved. We move into information items. Items 1 through 7 are normally accepted or not accepted by the commission as a whole. The chair will entertain a motion to approve the items collectively.
So moved.
Second.
About to say we better get a second. We have
Mr.
a,
Chair,
yes,
I
sir.
make a quick comment.
Yes,
before we
sir.
vote.
Absolutely.
I have to comment on page 113 of our information. I noticed that a unit name change involved the Auburn University Department of Aviation to the School of Aviation. And that would indicate to me that that is a move up. We have a daughter that's, gosh, she's been out 10 years now. She was a Learjet pilot, and she is a graduate of that program. And there were days it struggled, but thankfully they connected with Delta Airlines, and it has been smooth sailing since that time. So I was delighted to see this, that apparently moving up to a school is a higher designation than a department, which leads me to believe that they're on firm footing. And it's been a wonderful thing for her to have gone through that program to now be a pilot. And so I'm thrilled to see that. I just wanted to comment.
Absolutely. Thank you for your comments. Any other questions or comments? All in favor of approving, say aye.
Aye.
And opposed, like sign. The information items are accepted. And I just want to thank everyone again for being here. And I want to thank the staff and Dr. Purcell. I would put our executive director and our staff up against anybody in the country. Dr. Purcell is absolutely fantastic. His skill set of making relationships throughout the state is just second to none. And we're just thrilled to have him. It makes our job so much easier in what the staff does. And we just thank all of y'all. And so be careful going home, and we'll see you in June. Thank you.